Hello, everybody. Welcome to the B List Booster panel of the Multiverse Fundraiser. My name is Hollis Cole Thompson, and I'm going to be the moderator, I guess, for this episode, where we're going to be talking about some of the lesser known comic book characters that are as cool as many of the others, but don't necessarily get as much love as normal. I'm joined here by two great guys to have this discussion. First of all, we have Clyde Hall. Clyde, tell us about yourself.
Well, Elder Statesman of Geekery include includes. I've been a comic book reviewer. I'm currently I work for Comics Beat, The Beat, www.comicsbeat.com. They won an Eisner last year for our comic book journalism, so I'm part of their review department. I'm also a freelance writer. I have written for usually new pulp kind of fiction in anthologies, short stories for Stormgate Press, B&R Publications, and Blue Planet Press, and a few other places. So I have been, however, a comic book fan since I was between 2 and 3 years old and saw a black and white picture of a guy flying across a TV set and had no idea what this was, but was captivated. And then I saw my first Superman comic at a grocery store and made the connection. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Very cool. Very cool. You've been reading comic books then longer than me, and I'm sure most people watching have been alive. So you definitely have years of wisdom to talk about.
And a ton of obscure characters.
Yes, which is very valuable for today. I'm also joined by Cliff. Cliff, introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Cliff. I don't have accolades like Clyde. I'm just a guy with too much useless knowledge in my head, so I'm here. I grew up reading comics. I'm like probably a lot of kids from the 80s. Sometimes the only friends I had growing up were the characters in the books. And I just fell in love with them because of that. And I'm raising my kids to love them just as well. And of course, this darn manga stuff is kind of taking their attention more, but it's okay because it's all in good fun. But yeah, I'm just this guy that they bring on here every year to talk about stuff that he doesn't really know that much about, but sounds like he does. So.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm usually brought on to make Clyde look good. So
no. Anybody that can cosplay Catman as well as you did, kudos to you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
That is a deep cut too, Catman. That is not. Is that the DC Comics villain or the Fairly Odd Parents superhero character?
Well, it was supposed to be the DC one, but for anyone who's actually seen me in costume, I did look more like Adam West, and so it's okay.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you looked very much like the anti-hero
Yes.
Catman when he was, being redefined. But I couldn't get over. It's one of those cosplays that I poured over the pictures a long time because I'm looking at every little detail, going, "This is so cool." And talk about a B-lister. I mean, he is not a primary kind of character, but that's the kind of cosplay I like too. I like the ones that are less. Big guns are great, and people can do that. It's wonderful, but there's a whole bunch of secondary and tertiary characters that don't get live action interpretations much, and that's what my wife and I, as older cosplayers, we kind of try to go for that. And when other people do it, applause.
I have to give complete credit to my wife who made all the little details pop that made the costume work. I have no talent aside from just sitting here running my mouth, so it's all on her. But yeah, in fact, either the first or second B-list booster I was on, I did Catman for one. I don't remember which year it was, but yeah.
Yep.
I have a soft spot for Thomas Blake.
And my wife Jenny she came up with an idea for this year for the Metropolis Superman celebration and some of the other other convention, little conventions around here. She's sitting in the living room right now working on our costumes. So,
So
shout
you
out
are
to
going to be a
those
Superman?
cosplay spouses, huh?
You are going to be Superman this year?
I we don't normally talk about who we're going to be,
Oh, no, I'm
but
just hoping you're going to be there.
I'm hoping to be at the Superman celebration. And yeah, this what she had in mind. She came up over the winter. She came up with this idea, and I'm like, I have not seen that done. So we looked it up, and it's a cosplay that's not. I think we found one other person that had done it, but it is Superman adjacent. And there is another character that works with it that's a guy. So, we're going to try to, if everything comes in, we still have some things that are on order to come in to put the costumes together. But if it all works out, we should be able to have it. There's a Superman Day next month, the 18th, for like 88th anniversary. And there's a group here in town that are doing it, a get together for that. And I'm hoping that we can have this done by then to unveil it there and then have it down at Metropolis too, being a Supermanish kind of cosplay. But she's working on it now. So shout out to the cosplay spouses out there that make it our fun possible.
And for putting it up with
Amen.
us.
Yes.
Yeah. Amen. Cool. Well, Clyde, let's get it kicked off with you.
Okay.
Tell us about your character that
Okay.
you want to bring to light.
Well, Professor, before we start, when I'm done and Cliff takes over, I've got some pictures of another. We were talking about some spare. I'll send you some pictures on Facebook. Okay.
Cool. And I'll load them in, and then we'll come back to you, and you can do double dipping.
Double dippins. Okay. Well, here we go. Okay. So now this is one of the deepest dives I think I've ever done. Because this was something I just barely remembered from childhood, but I saw online on Reddit. Some people were bandying back and forth a couple of superhero names, and I had to look it up. And it just, it went from bad to worse from there. So, so what we're going to be looking at today, my B-list booster for 2026, the primary one is, hold on just a moment. Let me get it lined up here. Okay. There's this nebulous time between the premiere of the Saturday morning Hanna-Barbera cartoon Shazam, about a genie, in 1967, and the first appearance of Wonder Twins Zan and Jaina in the all-new Super Friends Hour in 1977. And between that time, there was another set of twins sharing common ground with both, like Shazam siblings Chuck and Nancy. Pam and Bill Harris were twins who came into the possession of matching mystical rings. Touching the rings together didn't call forth a giant genie like it did for Chuck or Nancy, but it changed Pam and Bill into superpowered adults, somewhat like a cross between the Zan and Jaina fist bump and any Shazamming member of the Shaz family. The Dynamite Duo origin was revealed not in a comic book either, but it was in a magazine that many kids from the era describe as their gateway drug into comic book fandom. Dynamite is the magazine's name. It was a magazine for children founded by Jeanette Kahn, when first published by Scholastic Incorporated, and it was continuously published from 1974 until 1992. Jeanette was only there for a short time. The magazine featured games and puzzles and recipes and articles on pop culture, including TV, celebrities, film stars, new projects coming out in theaters and on television, comic book characters. So in issue number 28, 1976, the origin of the Dynamite Duo was revealed across an existing 3-page comic book layout. So Pam and Bill Harris were ordinary teenagers until winning a pair of rings at a carnival changed their lives forever. When touched together, the rings transformed the pair into Dawnstar. Now, this Dawnstar, she premiered about a year before the Legion of Superhero character by the same name, so don't get them confused. And Night Glider. They were together the invincible Dynamite Duo. who can control the force of gravity. The art was credited as the King D Studio, although some of the original artwork, I've seen it sold now at Heritage Auction with credit to Chick Stone, longtime comic book artist. Stone worked in comic books during the Golden Age, including jobs with Fawcett and the original Captain Marvel, and he did some timely work with the Blonde Phantom line. He switched to magazine artwork during the 1950s, but he eventually returned to comics. And in the Silver Age, Stone gained fame as one of Jack Kirby's best inkers over at Marvel by working with Kirby on Fantastic Four. Stone also worked for the American Comics Group, or ACG, and he freelanced at DC from time to time. In the 80s, Stone did considerable work for Archie's Red Circle line of superhero comics as well. So the writing for the Dynamite Duo origin story was uncredited, but it went something like this. At a game booth in a traveling carnival, Pam Harris manages to knock down all the milk bottles and wins a set of identical rings bearing a black and red yin-yang design. She gives one to her twin brother, Bill, and dares him to wear it like she does. Challenge met, Bill leads Pam onto the roller coaster where they share a car. Midway through the ride, the coaster fails, the power goes out, and the cars derail. Panicked, the twins try to figure a way off the cars and out of their predicament as the coaster plunges. And their rings touch, giving off a zap of energy. Suddenly, Bill and Pam are replaced by what appear to be adult versions of themselves wearing blue, red, and yellow superhero uniforms. Both are immediately aware that they now have identical superpowers, namely gravity control and flight. And they use their abilities to save the failing coaster before returning to their teenage forms. Later at home, the twins discuss what happened while examining the rings more closely. Pam discovers that hers has a hidden compartment, and when she opens it, a phantom-like messenger of the ring appears, saying that he has only a minute to explain the destiny that has fallen to these young people. The messenger explains that the rings once belonged to Princess Dawnstar and Prince Nightglider, the rulers of the realm called Westeros. When touched together, the rings, or the ruler's rings, give him complete control over gravity, the ability to make an elephant weigh less than a feather, or a feather weigh some 10 tons if they wanted. The messenger says that fate has brought the rings to Pam and Bill so that they can find the missing prince and princess of Westeros and return them to the throne. He also warns that they'll encounter the original thief of those rings, an evil magician named Nefario. The messenger vanishes, and Pam and Bill, in their guises as Dawnstar and Nightglider, make plans for starting their superhero careers, including calling themselves the Dynamite Duo. It's branding that's got nothing to do with their powers. They don't explode. But it has everything to do with driving home the name of that magazine. So both are unaware that even now, the dread Nefario is watching them through a scrying mirror and planning to reclaim their mystical rings. In issue number 29, that's a 2-page continuation. It shows the twins battling criminals, saving citizens, and having a confrontation with Nefario using his sorcery. That evil magician, he toys with Dawnstar and Nightglider before returning them into their Bill and Pam forms and trapping them on knife-throwing platforms, and then preparing to hurl deadly daggers twinsward in a typical cliffhanger ending. The Dynamite Duo was featured from issues 28 through 99, and while the first adventures had no credits displayed, later ones did. Specifically, by number 58, the Kubert School of Art was providing the artwork, and I gotta say, it looks very Joe Kubert-esque. I mean, I read a lot of Kubert comics, and I would really be surprised if it wasn't Joe actually doing the first ones. Even more interesting is the writing credit. Jeanette Kahn, later of DC Comics fame, founded the magazine, as we said. She edited the first 3 issues of Dynamite. After that, the editor job was done by Jane Stein. Writing credits for numbers 58 of the Dynamite Duo Adventures lists jovial Bob Stein, husband of Jane Stein, as the writer. Bob's full name is Robert L. Robert L. Stein. So yes, at least part of the Dynamite Duo's adventures, their scripts were written by a pre-Ghost Bump Goosebumps R.L. Stein. If Scholastic Incorporated still holds the rights to the Dynamite Duo adventures, I think they're missing a golden opportunity. Scholastic is already making more annual domestic graphic novels than DC or Marvel. They should be making collections of the original Dynamite Duo adventures available. Each of the magazines had either 2 or 3 page editions to further the storyline, rather than in a regular comic book 32-page format. There's only 2 or 3 pages at a time. Right now, the only way to get those issues and get the Dynamite Duo adventures is to buy individual old Dynamite magazines. That's 71 adventures. And even though they're not really expensive, to buy 71 magazines of that kind, and the postage and the handling, unless you found them in one big collection, it would be a lot. And every time the names of these heroes pop up and somebody puts a picture up, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, that whole generation of kids go, I remember them. I had forgotten all about them, but they were my first superheroes. So I think you definitely got a ready-made nostalgia market for packaging them into a trade paperback. As a superhero duo, not part of a regular title and only appearing in the magazine format, it's, there should be a way to get it, or even I could see somebody starting a blog and reprinting them if they already had them all. But I think you would get a lot of reader interest from the nostalgia market by putting them together like that. And they may be obscure, these characters, but Robert Stein, R.L. Stein, he's out there making comic books right now. He's doing horror books again, horror comics. And I have to say, in all honesty, he's not doing it very well. Some of the other, I read a lot of horror anthology books over Halloween. And, he definitely just kind of, I got the feeling that he put out a story. It was the first story in the edition that he was in. He was, trumpeted on the cover as being part of the book, but I didn't see a lot of the Goosebumps charm in his work this time. But maybe he would be interested in revisiting some superheroes that he had done before. And if not, I think, either team him with a hot artist or put, we interviewed David Pepos yesterday, put somebody like him on it, get him involved, and then a great artist, and make a revisit to the classic stories, or a next generation, or a legacy kind of characters, a reimagining, something like that. If Scholastic did that, and it proved lucrative, I think a whole new generation of fans could be born, and nostalgic older fans definitely would be grateful. And it could even lead to all new Scholastic, like I say, graphic novels of them, not the reprints, but actually new stuff. So my suggestion to Scholastic is, I mean, you're not hurting. I get it. You're making a lot of money from your Scholastic work and everything, but this would be one of those fan-centric things that, if you want to call it fan service and nostalgia bait, you could. But I think it has a lot of, having just the few ones that I read, it has a really good storyline to it. And I think it deserves to be continued on, both for new fans and for the fans that bought the Dynamites issue after issue after issue, because they didn't want to miss the adventures of the Dynamite Duo.
So interesting, Clyde. And you actually blew my mind.
Okay.
You're telling me that Scholastic does more graphic novels than Marvel or DC?
Yep. And on an
That's
annual basis,
crazy.
yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Well, I did that research last year, so maybe it's changed, but at that time, and you look at all the stuff they put out, they do all the book fairs at schools and stuff. I mean, all the material for that, and they've done it for years and years and years, and they reprint the things that so yeah, they're They're big time.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I do want to put up.
I was going
Go
to. They
ahead,
put
Cliff.
out so many copies of Jeff Smith's Bone each year. They probably do more than that than DC does of anything by itself.
Absolutely.
That's a good point. I forgot that they did Bone. Yeah, that's one of their big money makers.
Mhm.
I also want to bring out a comment that Haley Patillo, who happens to be my wife, put Haley put online, where she said that when you were talking about the Dynamite series, like the magazine, it reminded her of a magazine called Highlights, which was a late 90s, early aughts thing.
Was she a goofus or was she a gallant?
That one's going over my head, but maybe she will comment later. I was not aware of the Highlights magazine, so that's something I was not a part of in the day. My last question for you is the last piece of art that you sent that we didn't display.
Yeah,
is this one, which looks like a doppelganger type storyline. You want to
yes.
explain what was going on in that panel?
Well, again, I only saw. I got 2 magazines, so I could do some background research on it. I'm only privy to that one little part of the story. I would love to know more about it. How it all. I believe this was Nefario bringing out an evil twins of to fight the originals, but I don't know all the details because I didn't get to see the adventure before it or the adventure after it. So
Gotcha.
not sure.
Understood. We got another comment from Haley talking about
Okay.
Scholastic this time. She says that Scholastic does a book fair every year at her office. One of the jobs that she works is at a church that also has a preschool inside of it. And so they do the Scholastic book fair. And she said that they pull up with a big Scholastic semi truck every time.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And just for those that don't know Highlights, that was a part of my childhood. For years, we had Highlight magazines in every doctor's office or dentist's office or at school. We had Highlights. So Goofus and Gallant, they would do. It was a 1-page, multiple panel deal, and it would be, Gallant waits in line patiently for lunch, and then you'd see the next. And you'd see him doing this. And then the next panel would be a kid that's kind of looks like him, but his hair was never combed. He's got dirt on his face. His clothes are all messy. That's Goofus. Goofus body checks everybody, including the teachers, to get to the front of the line.
That's fun.
So that was Goofus and Gallant is the comparisons.
Very fun. Well, Cliff, do you
And
have any comments?
If you were a child of the 80s, every doctor's and dentist's office you went to, the kid before you colored in to find the picture thing before you even had a chance to find anything. So no one knew where the elephant was.
Yeah.
Yes, but I always love coming on these with Clyde because I learned about characters I've never heard of before. And it hurts my wallet because usually afterwards I try to go out and find at least one copy of something that he talked about, and sometimes that gets pretty expensive.
Well, these were not that. Again, these were pretty easy to come by. The only problem is that if you wanted to get the whole thing, buying 71 of them is it's gonna. I know I can't do that.
Makes sense. Well, we are just about at the halfway point for this episode. So I want to remind everyone of what we are here for in the first place. You are watching the Multiverse Fundraiser. Hopefully this isn't news to you, but in case you just wandered in here in the internet somehow, we are benefiting a charity. We're a virtual Comic-Con that benefits comic books for kids, which is a nonprofit charity that is dedicated to providing age-appropriate comic books and toys for hospitalized children. We are working to raise money for them. If you'd like to make a donation, you can go to facebook.com/the Multiverse Fundraiser. There will be a post pinned to the top that takes you to the link to donate. We are over $800 as of the last count I saw. So that is a huge, huge big deal. Thank you so much for everyone who has been donating. Our goal is $2,000, and we still have a little bit of daylight left of this last day of the fundraiser. And the link will continue to be available after today for at least another week. So you can continue to donate at that time. With that being said, I want to hand this over to Cliff to talk about your B list booster.
All right. I always hate going after Clyde because I'm just like, I can't top that. But I will try. So my B list character that I'm going to talk about is a very deep cut also. I first came across this character the way I did a lot of comic book characters I've never heard of before, and that is through the Google machine. One day when I was Googling, of all things, South Park comic book characters, is where they turn your superheroes into looking like they're from South Park. And they had a whole list and it said public domain characters. And I was like, what is this? So that's where I discovered them. And I came across a character called the Black Terror, who was dressed all in black and had a cape, and he had skull and crossbones on his costume. I was like, oh, so this is like, what is this? And so I did a deep dive. And I discovered he is one of hundreds of characters from the golden age of comics, which I find to be one of the most fascinating times in comic book history, because it was like the Wild West. It was, everybody wanted to come up with a new big thing, and everything was new. This fancy thing called Superman had shown up, and everybody wanted to make the next one. And so all of these publishers that no one has ever heard of started just pumping out books. And one of these publishers was called Nedor, Nedor. And they put out an anthology comic, like a lot of people did in the 40s, called Exciting Comics. And in 1941, Exciting Comics issue 9 came out, and it introduced the Black Terror, who was a product of that time. He was a pharmacist named Bob Benton, who was trying to invent I think he called it a pep up formula. Basically, he was your typical milksop character from the 40s, and he wanted to be more like the later days, the Mike Atlas buffed characters you would see in the ads with not getting dirt kicked in his face on the beach. And his little friend Tim, who was his assistant, added something called formic ethers to his formula, which apparently comes from red ants, and it gave him superpowers, because back in the 40s, everything gave you superpowers. And so he decided, like most people back then, it was like, I'm going to dress up and fight crime and corruption in my city. And the Black Terror was born. And he had, your average 1940s golden age Superman-like powers. He had super strength. He was super tough. He could jump really high because not many people flew back then. But like all good 1940s superheroes, no matter how tough he was or how many bullets bounced off of him or hands broke on his face when he punched you, if you hit him in the back of the head with anything, he would get knocked unconscious. So he had his sidekick, Tim, and they call themselves the Terror Twins, who came along and helped him out after he got hit in the head. And this was Nedor's biggest hit of the time, so much so that by the time he was canceled in 1949, the Black Terror was starring in 3 books. He was in Exciting Comics, his own title Black Terror comic, and he was the feature story in America's Best Comics. And he was back then in the 40s, he was fighting gangsters and robbers and corruption and crooked politicians. And then, we got involved in the war. So his stuff shifted from not so much fighting gangsters, but now he's fighting, seditionists and those darn Nazis and those poorly stereotyped other countries that were involved in the war. And this lasted up until 1949, when like a lot of characters from that era, he went away because comic superheroes lost their appeal towards the end of the 40s and into the 50s. So they were replaced by more Western and sci-fi comics. Now, your big names, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, those guys, they endured and they were around, but there were hundreds of characters and publishers who just went away at the end of the superhero boom. Nedor tried to hang on and do some, the cowboy comics and stuff, but it was never as popular. And Black Terror fell into the public domain after a few years. And that's when things got really crazy. And I found a whole list of appearances he made that were not on my notes that I ended up finding online. So I got to look at my iPad to make sure I don't leave any out. But starting from 1983, he appeared in AC Comics. Started up a line of books and brought back the Black Terror, but also did reprints of his original stories. But due to trademark issues, they lost the right to do it. Something to do with because they called him the Terror instead of the Black Terror. Roy Thomas, friend to every Golden Age character ever, brought the Black Terror into his 1986 miniseries Alter Ego. And then he appeared in a bunch of small name publishers that I couldn't find anywhere online to look at their books. That's how obscure they were. Darkline Comics had a version of the Black Terror for a little while. Eclipse Comics did a 3-issue miniseries of the Black Terror. What else was there? Image had the Black Terror show up in a few books in the early 2000s. A comic company I'd never heard of called Wildcat Books, MetaHuman Press, and Heroes Inc. all did a line of Black Terror books that lasted maybe 1 to 3 issues. And founder of Comic Book Spectrum, Brian K. Morris, had a hand in a prose book called The Terrors. It was about the Black Terror. But the biggest 2 instances outside of the Golden Age of the Black Terror are in 2001, when Alan Moore revived America's Best Comics as an extension of Wildstorm Comics. And we were introduced to Alan Moore's character Tom Strong, who was a two-fisted science hero. And he found a planet that was much like Earth, but somehow was formed with part of a starship. I love Alan Moore, but sometimes his stuff confuses me, and I just go with it. So I don't know. And the planet that was formed was called Terra Obscura, and it was just Alan Moore's excuse to play with a bunch of Golden Age public domain characters like the Black Terror. And Black Terror appeared in Terra Obscura up until it went away, including, and I never read these because I didn't come along to the ABC Comics until much later in life. Apparently, the Black Terror died at one point, and his brain was uploaded into a computer that just happened to be called Terror 2000 because, of course, it did. And then he was uploaded into his former sidekick Tim's body after Tim died. And then Terra Obscura went the way of the dinosaur, and the comic went away. And the Black Terror fell back into obscurity and into the public domain, where I finally had my first exposure to the Black Terror in the form of comics when I picked Alex Ross and Jim Krueger's Project Superpowers, which was basically Alex Ross's love letter to the public domain characters. The story, for those of you who've never heard of Project Superpowers, Alex Ross and Jim Krueger came up with this story where all of these characters from the Golden Age, you find out, were locked away in. It kept changing between issues if it was Pandora's box or Pandora's urn, but we're just going to say they were put away for a little while because another public domain character, the Fighting Yank, believed that the only way to save the world from evil was to get rid of all fighting. So his idea was he pulled all of his friends into this urn and kept them trapped from the Golden Age to the present time. So, these poor guys were kind of like Mon-El from DC. They were stuck in the Phantom Zone for 70 years. And then, as per plot device needed, they were brought into the modern age to deal with modern evils. And one of the characters that was brought back was the Black Terror. And he was more of a focal point of the book. And he even got his own series out of it that lasted for 14 issues. And he was more, at this point, of a jaded character. He was angry that he'd been locked away for so long and missed out on life. Excuse me. And couldn't find his sidekick, Tim, who was also trapped with him. And if you can tell from the picture on screen, they really did they leaned real heavy more into the pirate motif he had. In fact, he even had a swashbuckling sword for a little while. But he got a major power upgrade from the Golden Age to here, because he was more, still couldn't fly, but he was more on strength level of a Superman. He was, tearing up buildings and chunking giant pieces of earth at folks. But he was surly because of all this time he had missed. And this led to him in his own series taking on the U.S. government because they had something to do with his sidekick Tim being locked away. And it lasted, and it was really good. It's a really good series. If you've never read Project Superpowers, I highly, highly recommend it. It shows you that there are other great characters out there that are not at the big two or the big three, depending on if you ask Image what they're doing this week. It's a really good story. Dynamite puts it out. It's still in print and trade form, so you can pick it up very easily. But at the end of Project Superpowers, the original one, because they've brought back different versions of it. The Black Terror was such a big hit. There was a second series called Masks that was brought out, and he was one of the main characters in it. But it lasted for 7 issues, if I remember correctly. I did not put that down in my notes because I today. And then he got a second series in 2019, but I remember the first issue coming out at the end of 2018, so it's one of those weird publisher dates, actual date things. But it's a 5-issue series that gave him a different story point of coming into the modern age as opposed to Project Superpowers. And this new one, Bob Bennett, who was the Black Terror, at the end of the war, World War II, and the end of the Golden Age, he retired from crime fighting. But these formic ethers that gave him his superpowers made him ageless. So he still looks the way he does from 1940. But it's given him severe PTSD because all the stuff he saw during the war and all this after the war. And now you add to it, he has spent the last 70 years watching everyone he knew grow old and die around him while he's still being the same. So he becomes a Valium addict. He takes 3 or 4 pills of Valium a day just to try and stay normal. He gets a job back as a pharmacist, which is what he wanted. Yes, it's amazing how that stuff works. But that old itch of wanting to do good and to put on the costume is still there. And he sees this suspicious fella in the pharmacy one day, because, all suspicious people hang out in pharmacies. And he followed him, and it turned out the guy was a serial killer. And so the Black Terror came out of retirement. And this led you find out that there was a group of former supervillains who retired along with him and were monitoring all these heroes that were left retired. And it became a battle between him and this evil syndicate. And it was a really good story, but I didn't enjoy it as much as Project Superpowers, just because it leaned a little too hard into him being addicted to being a hero and addicted to the costume. Kind of like, for any of you who read any of the later stuff with Rex Tyler, Our Man, where he was addicted to the costume and addicted to his Miraculo pill. Miraculo. I'm from the South. That's hard for me to say. It leaned a little bit too much into that for my taste, but it was just another good story involving this character that nobody's ever heard of outside of like 10 people. But yeah, and then after it went away in the end of 2019, not a lot has come out since then with him in it. Dynamite still is publishing stuff under the Project Superpowers banner, but they're running into that funny issue of, you're using these characters so much, you're going to have to register them or stop using them. So they like take a break where they don't have to like pay for like a copyright for them. So Black Terror is right now on his time out until it's time they can use him again without having to pay for it. So, but yeah, I always liked the Black. From the moment I saw his costume, I was like, that's a pretty cool costume. And it's Black. I thought he was always just a really good character that does not get as much attention like a lot of these characters from the Golden Age don't. I mean, we all think of the ones we all know: Batman, Superman, Green Arrow. You can go down the list, but for every Superman, there are a dozen Black Terrors or Green Llamas or the Flame and Flame Girl that no one has ever heard of. I'm glad that they still have the Dynamite does something with them when they can. And I hope they keep doing it, because like I said, I'll buy it. I bought everything they put out so far with it, even that weird stuff where they weren't sure what they were doing with it. But I still bought it because I want to support it.
They put out a Vampirella meets the Superpowers as a team book mini. I think it was last year. It was a good read. It was very enjoyable. I was surprised, but it was good.
Yeah, they put out a lot of Vampirella books that I never even thought of. My oldest daughter is a Lady Mechanica fan. For those of you who have ever heard of that comic series, and so yeah, I had to hunt down Lady Mechanica and Vampirella. So yes.
So
yeah,
my question for you, Cliff, is you mentioned that obviously the costume has a very pirate theme to it. What was the explanation for that? Because pharmacist Milksop who gets superpowers, that doesn't automatically connect to pirates for me.
Well, you see, he told his young apprentice Tim, go down to the costume shop and grab something where people won't know it's me. And that's what he came back with.
Was the pirate thing.
Yeah, and conveniently they had a smaller size one that Tim could wear too when he became the Kid Terror. So yes, there's no elaborate. This was the 40s. There was no elaborate anything. It was Jay Garrick breathes some hard water fumes and he can run fast. And the wizard got mongoose blood.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then put together a costume that, as my students say, the Golden Age Flash looks like Jay Garrick went to a Goodwill and just put together a superhero costume from the original Flash.
Yeah.
Fun.
Did you read Brian K. Morris's Terror, The Terrors?
I have it. I haven't read all of it, but I've liked what I've read so far.
He kind of does Isaiah Bradley, Captain America turn with it, and that's the most I had dealt with the character. I just read a few issues here and there with him over the years, but that was the deepest dive. But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I picked it up, and the name escapes me right now. A prose retelling of his origin, both at Superman Celebration one year.
Hmm?
And for those of you who've heard me on here before, I have going on 13 long boxes of unread comics now that I'm behind on. So there's a lot of stuff I haven't gotten to yet. Maybe in 2182 I'll have finished it, but we'll see.
Cool. I know the feeling. Well, Clyde, I think you're going to get to double dip. You have
Okay.
a second group, or it looks like it might even be a group rather than an individual.
It is.
character.
It is a group idea. Yep. So Archie Comics, when everybody in the 60s went, oh, superheroes are big again. Don't we have some of those in our stock? Well, let's put them in a book, or let's make a book with some kind of superheroes that we can throw together. Well, Archie Comics, before Archie became America's favorite teenager, they had put out the Shield, actually, I think before Captain America by a year, as a patriotic hero, and they had some other superheroes. But so they tried to bring him out in the 60s again, and it was not well received. The Mighty Crusaders was their group of all their heroes together. And it was, I don't blame them for trying, but it wasn't very good. And they have since they've gone with DC, trying to license it to them for a while to see if they could get the imprint or the Impact line of comics, if you remember that from the 90s. That was based on all of the Red Circle, they call them, the Red Circle heroes of Archie. And it went for a little while, but didn't really do much. And they've tried since, and they've tried it in their own books. But recently, they've done something that got my attention and was really good. Individually, they have gone back and they have looked at some of these characters. The other picture that I sent you, Hollis, has got the more modern covers. There you go. So you had the Fox, Bob Phantom, Darkling, and Kardak the Mystic, and others that they give just a one-shot story to. And those, they know that they aren't necessarily going to lead to anything big. They take some chances, and there were some really good stories. Those four especially, I would recommend people to go find them and read. They did one of the Jaguar, which is one of my favorite characters from that comic group of superheroes, and it was not great. But they've done some versions of her before that were better. So here's my idea. Instead of just doing these one shots every once in a while, take the guy that wrote the Fox, because so you have the Fox, who's a traditional type of hero, just kind of a Batman sort of guy. But his family has joined him. And his family all have different ways of doing the same kind of job psychologically. I think that his wife is a psychologist, so her whole angle at crime fighting is not only combat, but also getting to the root of, she talks the bad guys or villainesses out of the path that they've taken and offers alternatives. It sounds weird. It is different, but it was fun. And then his son, who's a martial artist, became Ghost Fox. So if you put up the other picture, I'll run down my idea here. Okay, so I think they should make a Crusaders Reserve. Instead of the Mighty Crusaders, who are like their Justice League or their Legion of Superheroes, you got the Legion of substitute heroes. These are people that are on the injured list. They might be from the major list, but they're on here because, or maybe they have some stress issues. Maybe they did a Wanda Maximoff whoopsie MCU moment, and so they get taken down to the minors for a little while for some rest and recuperation and some not quite so important or world shattering kind of work, relief efforts, rescue missions, things like that. And you make them the Crusaders Reserve. And you also, this is a way to to take legacy characters or new characters and give them a tryout to see if they got the stuff to become one of the Mighty Crusaders. So here's my idea from what I've read recently and just from some speculation. I jotted down some a few things that I thought might work okay for this. I can find it real quick here. First of all, I would put Lady Fox and Ghost Fox in there because they're just fun. That whole psychology angle and the kid wanting to be like his dad, but to be different than his dad, I thought was brilliant. She Fox is what she's called, and so she has empathic projection. The reason that she can effectively counsel people is because she can make them feel what their victims are feeling, or what other people around them are feeling, or help them to be empathic with other people. And she is very effective as a crime fighter that way. And actually, not only winning the battle, but changing the outlook of villains, actually making changes in their whole approach to life and reality. So I thought that was a really interesting concept. Ghost Fox is acrobat, and he's a junior varsity cage fighter. So yeah, he's out there doing the kicks and the twirls and the spins and the parkour. And his dad can't do any of that. His dad, I think, was a reporter originally, and he took this masked identity, and he could box a little bit, but that's about it. But he's given rise to these other more interesting heroes. Bob Phantom has invulnerability and teleportation as his powers. It's a goofy name, but his powers are really, he would be a heavy hitter in the group. The Fly. Okay, so we had Fly Girl, and she's been on the main team more than the Fly recently, so he's been graduated down to the reserves. But he has enhanced strength and insect powers. Darkling. She has an enchanted cloak that allows communication with and summoning of magical creatures, both seelie and unseelie. Kardak the Mystic, he's a talented stage and street magician, but he also is the owner of a cursed ruby, which grants invisibility, but only traveling through a parallel nightmare dimension. It's sort of like Cloak and Dagger if there were things in the dark waiting for you to take you on if you use it. Fireball is fire resistant. He can control and absorb heat and flames, but can also generate thermal waves, and that helps him to make superhuman leaps and produces a subconscious thermal field which deflects things like bullets and projectiles. Mr. Justice is ghostly. He's one of my favorites. He's ghostly. He's an entity possessing physical bodies, sort of like, think of a cross between Deadman and let me think here. He reminds me of a cross between Deadman and Dr. Druid. That's who it was, Dr. Druid. At times, Mr. Justice has been, because he hops bodies, he's been Mrs. Justice, Miss Justice, Ms. Justice, and Junior Justice, depending on the host body. He has astral projection and communication, ESP, of sensing evil entities. He has flight, shrinking, personal and projective shrinking ability. He can shrink other people too. And he has magic resistance. Doc Reeves would be the last member of the party. That's Dr. Malcolm Reeves, a brilliant scientist and inventor. He created an underwater exosuit. It filtered oxygen from water and allowed propelled travel to great depths with no effect from the water pressure. So he would be a great aquatic hero, but also somebody that you could use in the lab to overcome things with scientific, kind of the Ray Palmer, the Ray Palmer aqua atom of the group. He's also invented a disintegration ray goggle that he wears. So he's got a little Cyclops in there too. It's called the Dissolval Visor. So I think the Crusaders Reserve with, again, and I wish I had written it down. I don't have his name, but the writer for that Fox one-shot took such delight in redefining how the Fox and his family fought criminals that I would just love to see him have a shot at doing a team composed of these characters or characters like them.
Well, I think that if Archie Comics wants to try again seriously at the superhero genre, they should call you up, Clyde,
There you go.
because it looks like you put together a very well thought out pitch. And I will say, I agree with you that the She-Fox character sounds really fascinating. That's the one that interests me the most out of what you
Yeah.
talked about. So
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of potential with that character.
Yeah, Clyde, I years ago at a convention, I was back bin diving, and I bought a brick of Mighty Crusaders books. It was a collection of everything that from each publisher has been put out. I only spent like $20 on it.
Mhm.
Some of them were hit or miss, but it was a really good $20 to spend.
I always feel
Cool.
bad
Well-
because they've tried so many times to make a successful team book.
Mhm.
And I mean, they've put some talent on it before and spent some money, and it just never, they have a board. Their merchandising consists of a board game from 1966. That's it. A couple little action figures, but that's it. So they deserve better.
Well, let's hope that they eventually get that. Well, we are coming right on the hour. So this is, I think, a wrap for the B-List boosters for this year. Clyde and Cliff, thank you again so much for being here, for showing us about these obscure characters that maybe deserve a little bit more attention. I definitely learned stuff in this, so it's been a real blast. And remember that this is again for the Multiverse fundraiser. So if you are so inclined, please give us some sharing, help us get the word out. I am particularly thankful to businesses like Branson's Nerdy Nexus and Texarkana that are supporting our advertising efforts, along with the comic book store Excalibur, the Stain Page bookstore, and of course my own institution, the University of Arkansas at Hope and Texarkana. Thank you all again, and you are not going to want to miss the next panel starting in 1 minute, which is the Indie Authors panel. If you are interested in what it's like to be an independent author, you definitely want to check that out. So I'm going to say see you on the next one. Thank you all.
Have a good weekend.
The Multiverse Fundraiser is partnering with Comic Books for Kids to raise money for their cause. Their mission is to provide comic books to children in hospitals and cancer centers across the United States, Canada, and the UK. We believe in the importance of providing stories that promote hope and bravery to kids who are facing things that are scarier than any supervillain. And we truly believe in this cause. To donate, you can either go to our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/The Multiverse Fundraiser or directly to comicbooksforkids.org.
The Multiverse Fundraiser would like to thank our sponsors: Earth Dog Studios, Clobbern Comics, The Art of Brian Rodman, Studio Moonfall, Elusive Comics, and of course, the Phoenix Sisters Entertainment Network for hosting this event. Learn how to support these businesses on the MVFR website.